Hello. Good evening. Wanna start this? Well, it's so good to do this. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. I can see you. I have a screen, so if you want to say hello, please do so. And let me know where you're from. And yeah, welcome to my home studio. I made it a bit, I decorated it myself, put some colors in here just for you for today. And yeah, if you have questions, you're welcome to ask them, and I will answer some of them after the next piece and then after the third piece as well. But before we do that, let me just play one more song. Let's go on a walk together. Let's just imagine we're all together and we are walking at the beach, and we hear the waves coming and going. We see the seagulls fly by. So this is ocean. All right, this was Ocean. Um, Now, I think it is time for those of you who are maybe not yet familiar with this instrument to say a few words so you know what I'm doing. It looks like magic and it is magic, but how exactly does it work? So, first of all, you probably know this instrument is called the theremin, and it was actually invented exactly 100 years ago by the Russian physicist Leon Theremin. And Leon Theremin, he was not only a physicist, but he also was a cellist. And well, he thought one day, wouldn't it be nice to have an instrument to play, which was really easy to play? You don't even have to touch it while you play it. And so after some experiments, he came up with this theremin, with this instrument, which can produce a sound by simple hand movements in the air. So if I just move my hand like this, for example, I can make a sound. I can even just paint a sun into the air. The way it works is that there's this box, there's a lot of electronics inside, and then we have two antennas. And these antennas are surrounded by electromagnetic fields. I can influence these fields with my body capacitance. So the upright antenna changes the pitch. If I go closer to the antenna, then the pitch gets higher. Basically, it works a bit like a radio antenna. Like there's this field around it, which is circular, so it goes in all directions. And you can play your notes anywhere in space. Like this instrument is endless. And then on the other side, we have this loop-shaped antenna, and when I go further away from this antenna, I can change the volume. So the volume will increase when I raise my hand. So it's a very simple principle. Basically, you can imagine like it's a string instrument, but just the opposite way, like doing the sound with the right hand and not with the left hand. But basically you have the volume hand and the pitch hand. Now you might ask, well, it's great, just move your hands in the air, but how do you produce precise notes? And we can measure the air with our hand. So that's the principle I'm working with. That you can say you decide that one length of a hand equals 1 octave. And you can adjust your instrument so that it fits into that pattern. So maybe sometimes before I play, you see me do this. I make a position with a closed hand. I call this position 1. I stretch out my hand. I have a length of a hand. And what I would like to hear is an octave. And then I tune my instrument so that 1 octave fits into my hand. And that's how you tune the instrument. And then once you've done that, you can play a scale by simply opening and closing your hand. That's how simple it is. Let me see if there are some questions. No, okay. Ja, to nevidím. All right. So I think let's take questions of you after the next piece. And so this one is a newer composition of mine, which I played on my last tour last autumn. It's called On Wings of Light and Time. Let me have a sip of water. All right, on to your questions. So, Carolina, the first one. Carolina, how did you discover the theremin? How did you make the decision to focus on it? I started to play the theremin from a very young age. I started when I was 7, and I had already played piano and violin. And then my parents introduced me to the instrument. And they were really into electronic music, and they did their own shows. And so they somehow came across the theremin. And then we visited a concert of my teacher back then, by Lydia Kavina. And I remember that because it was this moment where it was the first time I saw the instrument being played properly. And yeah, then my parents bought me the instrument and I started to play. And somehow I always knew that the theremin was my thing, because I started to perform already from a very young age as well. And when I was on stage, and even if I was nervous, I always knew, everybody thinks I'm doing magic, so I can't do anything wrong. Which, in retrospective, of course, I couldn't. But yeah, back then it gave me a lot of confidence. Elliot from New York asks, have you always been comfortable using your voice to make music, or did that come after playing theremin for a long time? That's a good question. I have not been comfortable using my voice. In fact, over the last years, I think my voice grew, and just last week, I took my first voice lesson again after a long time, and I know there's so much more to explore, and I'm really happy to go in that direction and to explore more. So basically, I started with loops, and I always started with improvising and singing my own lyrics, because I don't sing on any written lyrics, and that's what feels most comfortable right now. But yeah, I'm very, very excited to explore, and maybe also singing a song one day. Who knows? Mike asks, how would one start to learn the theremin? Well, if you're interested to learn and you're excited about it, that's the first great step. Then it depends, what you want to do. Like, maybe look for what style you want to play. Is it more experimental? Is it more classical? And then, of course, you need an instrument, and then you can take lessons. There's different teachers in the world. Because you say that, I also offer online lessons if you're interested and we're not in the same town, then that's good. And there's a lot of video tutorials online which you can watch to get a sense. So if you have a question, just send me a message. Juan asks, did you have any influence from Clara Rockmore? What do you think of her? Clara Rockmore is one of the greatest virtuosos which lived on this planet to play the theremin, and she showed the world that this is a real instrument. And when I was young, I listened to her music as well, and she had a very specific playing style. Back then, the instruments were different. The tradition of playing was different, so she used to play with a lot of vibrato, for example, and distances between the notes were bigger, so it was a lot of playing with the hand, not so much only with the fingers. And I really like that style and that tradition, and sometimes I copy it, although I for myself mostly play more clean notes. Tiffany asks, what is your composing process? So everything starts with an improvisation for me. Years ago I tried to sit down with a blank piece of paper and then try to come up with an idea, but that I quickly discovered that doesn't work for me. So I just play, and sometimes pieces I always play an improvisation in the concert as well, and sometimes it's there. So then I keep developing the piece afterwards, and the best ideas come during sound check, I have to say, because you're just doodling around. You're like, do you get that? Is that volume enough? And then let me just improvise something, and you're not like super conscious that something has to be good, and then you get this idea. So yeah, that's how my process is. And then if I like something, I just try to develop it further. David from Mexico asks, your music style reminds of William Orbit and something we could hear along with Björk. What are your artist's influences? Well, I would say probably the different influences, but one of the personalities I admire most is Bobby McFerrin. And years ago, when I started to developing the style of playing, I was watching his videos a lot, and I just loved his presence on stage and the way he could interact with the audience. So I would say he has been a big influence for me in my music, yeah. Another question, how is your daily practice? Well, you can say that now, because now I'm actually practicing daily. You couldn't say that last year because I didn't really have a time. But now that we are all stuck at home, I am actually practicing every day. Let me have it. And basically, I'm trying to do some fingering exercises first to feel where my body is at in that day, because every day is different and you don't want to get frustrated, so you just want to see where you're at and take it from there. And even if I'm like, okay, maybe today it doesn't feel so good, then okay, what can I do? Then maybe I should need to warm my hands, and that will make me better, move my body. So just tune in first into your body to see where you're at. And then I'll do some exercises, just positioning things so I can get a grip of the air. And then right now I'm practicing one specific piece, so I'll just take little bits and play around as long as I want to. You are so free when playing the theremin. It's remarkable. How do you keep free as you are but retaining position as much as the instrument requires? Okay, so I think it means I have to be in a way, I'm free with my instrument, right? Because this instrument is, I think it's the most free instrument there is. We have an unlimited playing space. You can, find notes anywhere. But still, if you want to play precise, then you need to be very focused on just one particular place in space to be able to play one note in tune. And it's important to find the balance. And to not only be focused on, I have to play that note in tune, so I'm focusing on this area in space. No, remember always that your whole body is playing the instrument, right? You are a part of the instrument. So feel your whole body while you play. Feel that you are grounded, you have a support from your core, so that you can be free with your arms. And then distinguish between, now I want to play some precise notes, and now maybe I want to do a gesture. And that's a different story for gesture, where I'm not focusing on exact pitches. I can use maybe also my whole body to move along with it. So yeah, it's just two different techniques, and you can combine these ones. Sergio, how was the process of integrating the theremin with Ableton? And the next question is similar from Steve. Can you describe your environment, Ableton Live, controllers? How do you build the loops? Okay. So the theremin itself, I showed you how it works, and that's the basics. But then you can add sounds, you can create loops, you can build your own orchestra with the theremin. And you can do that with different technology. You can, for example, use guitar pedals. I have one right here, which I'm still using. And that's a harmonizer. And that gives me the option to add notes to my original note, because usually, of course, the theremin is a monophonic instrument. So if I press that, I can play a chord, right? And that's one thing to do. And the other thing is that I use my computer and Ableton Live and the effects in Ableton Live together with theremin. And I have different controllers to change the effects. Let me try to summarize. One controller is this ring I'm wearing on my finger, and that's a MIDI controller. So that controller changes parameters with gestures. So, right, I have my basic gestures, high pitch, low pitch, loud, soft. But now I'm adding 3 additional gestures. Up and down, it's actually the same. And then rolling to the side and panning to the side. And I can map whatever effects I want to it. But right now, I added the delay to this roll movement. So, turn this off. Hold one note. And it's dry again. So this is dry and this is wet, right? And then if I do the pen movement, I added a tremolo effect on that one. So if I move my hand to the side, I add the tremolo effect. So for example, what I did with Ocean right now is I had the harmonizer on, gives me a chord. Then I used the delay and I had a tremolo effect. So it's... And because there is a delay, you still hear the chord from before when you add the new chord, right? And then I have another controller which is on the floor, which I basically use as a loop station, and I use the Ableton intern looper. Maybe you could swing to this camera so I can show, because if I'm pressing a button here, you will see this little guy go red. It records right now, and then it plays, and I can overdub if I want to, and then it just plays it on, and I can stop it, and I can erase it with these knobs. Too many knobs, but you get the hang of it. Maybe that's enough for Ableton talk. Is there... one more question there. Has it any sense to play drawings with a theremin? Does it make sense to play drawings? Well, okay. So basically, as I said before, we are playing in space. We can paint something into the air, and there's a sound. So yes, you can draw your music and play a sound painting. Of course, the outcome of the pitch will be a bit random, maybe, or you can even know where to stop if you want to reach a certain note. And that's what I call the using the space, using the freedom of the theremin. So combine these classical movements with the freedom you have. And one last question from Elliot. You have perfect pitch, right? Yes. When did you discover that? Is theremin more difficult for those with relative pitch, or is it at all practice? Well, I discovered that I have perfect pitch when I was pretty young. I think my piano teacher sat down with me and she was like, I think you have perfect pitch. I'm like, okay. I'm not sure. Like, I'm sure it helps to have perfect pitch to find your starting note. But I mean, imagine you're a singer. You know, if you have perfect pitch or if you don't, you can still be a great singer. So I don't necessarily think that's a plus. And with a theremin, you can also use a tuner, right? You can just plug it in and you can see your note. And sometimes for me, it's even disturbing if somebody plays in a different key and I have to adjust, so I can't do that. So it has pros and cons. Well, thank you so much for questions. And thank you for being here. Thank you to Música and Segura for doing this, for hosting this event. And now I will be performing. Let me just go to the right track. Some little adjustments. Let me play one last piece for you, and that is called For N.